Mabuhay!
Hi! Welcome to
The Babaylan Bruha Book Club podcast.
It's Your Village Kapwatids, Steph
and Imee, and here we are together again. And as always, in efforts to decolonize our minds, bodies, and reconnect with spirit by ways of relation via conversation, of education, interpretation, and integration.
So this is our invitation for you to join us on our journeys as we discuss the works of honored artists, authors, and thought leaders in the Filipinx diaspora.
Quick disclaimer, we want to acknowledge that in this moment, everyone is exactly where they need to be.
And since we are not experts, yet we share our own unique lived experiences, we invite you to take or toss any statements, opinions, words that we may use as you choose.
We are so glad you found your way here.
So, as always, before we begin, we want to take a moment to ground and take a moment to come back into this space by pausing with our breaths and our bodies. If it's safe for you, we invite you to close your eyes, straighten your spine, and now direct your focus into your breath. We'll take some few inhales and exhales together. When you inhale, extend your belly out. And then when you exhale, extend your belly button into your spine. Let's do this together now. And exhale. Let's do it once more together. Inhale. And exhale. Feel free to breathe on your own from here. But can you connect back into your body and into this moment? Can you try to not think about earlier? Can you try to not think about later? Can you just feel how it is to just be? To be in this here and now moment. And as we begin our conversation today, like always, we thank God Batala Creator for another gathering. In gratitude, we acknowledge our benevolent ancestors and invite all the seen and unseen forces to guide and protect this conversation today. We also acknowledge the original land people Imee and I currently occupy, knowing we cannot do our own remembrance work without remembering them. For Imee, that's the mound builders that are the Hopewell and Adena people in Ohio. And for myself, that's the Bay Miwok Yokuts people in the inner Bay Area, inland of California. And with gratitude, we also acknowledge your presence, dear Kapwatin, your energy, your light, no matter wherever and whenever you're tuning in.
All right. Thank you, Sissy, for leading us in that moment of breath, connecting to our bodies and connecting to our breath. And now, as always, we're going to go into Bruha Tings time, where we just talk about kind of our rituals and our spiritual practices, or just some things that are quote unquote Bruha like. So we always give ourselves 90 seconds just for structure, because we can be taught, for capitalistic structure. So I can go first. Do you want to time me something?
All right, ready?
I am ready.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, so recently, I was at my mother-in-law's house, and she gave me these ingredients for tea. So one of the things was guanabana.
Guanabayano.
It's also known as sour sap guanabana. So soursop leaves.
Mhm.
And so she's like, I had some medical things going on. And so she was like, I want you to have this tea and drink it every day. And it's anti-inflammatory, helps with headaches. It actually, some of the studies say it works, it beats cancer. So
Yep.
that's good. And then she told me too, she was like, if you eat avocados, don't throw away the skins and the seed. So there's a film, like a, I don't know, there's an outside to the seed, so you take that out off, but you can dry it out in the oven and like chop it up, and it's actually really good for, it's also anti-inflammatory, helps with digestive issues, it helps with ulcers. So I've been just felt like, wow, this is like, and like ancestral, or like, cultural. And so I was just so grateful for her to share that with me. So I've been doing that. Some
Yes,
hot
for ancestral plant medicine.
tea. Make some tea, drink it.
How to taste.
So the soursop tea, the guanabana tea, it tastes kind of like leaves,
Oh, I
but
like leaves. Leaf
it's,
taste.
yeah, but it's like,
Leaves.
very leafy. It kind of reminded me of like when you were a kid and you used to make potions. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, as
uh,
a bruja, you make potions and stuff. So, but the avocado seed one, it smells so good. And I put a little bit of honey and like a little bit of non-dairy milk in there to make it kind of creamy. So it's good.
you made a plant ancestor milk tea?
I did. I made a I should put boba in it next time.
Oh, snap, some grass jelly. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's one of my wellness center dreams. Yeah.
What, grass jelly? Actually, I've never had grass jelly before. What's
Really?
grass?
I had my I had boba yesterday. And I didn't have boba. I had grass jelly and my oolong milk tea.
Oh, I gotta look that up. Okay.
It's a nice little break if you don't want the gumminess of a
Yeah.
boba.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So you ready for your Bruha Tings, sis?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. 3, 2, 1, 90 seconds.
Okay, so a Bruha Ting is I'm just gonna talk about my hair because I guess if you're tuning in, like, oh snap, she's a redhead. I'm not really a redhead. It's like plum. But I felt like, like in a lot of scripture, they say cover your hair because it's an extension of your aura or it's also an antenna. And I think this personal journey I've been going through these past few years, the commitment to change my hair, I feel like it's a spiritual thing, like when women and men and non-binary changes their hair, it's like a choice. It's like a
Mhm.
spiritual meaning to it. And for me, it's been about the seasons. So I'm honoring that in light of like spring and entering summer. I was blonde, and they were definitely looking kind of sparse. So I was like, okay, it's time to switch it up. And now I have a hella red, pink color in my hair. And
Looks
I'm,
good.
thank you, sis. So y'all's gotta come to the YouTubes, check it out. But yeah, I'm not looking forward to washing my hair, but I think that that's part of the bruja thing, I guess, to connect to my body, even my hair, and like all the ways to maintain it. So, anyways, my point in sharing this is that hair is a bruja thing. Oh, for me. And yeah, I think that this season I'm in has been like coloring my hair with the seasons. So
Yeah. Yeah. Hair is very energetic. It holds a lot of energy. And I know, people chop it off. I feel like men, or people who can grow beards, usually if they go through a breakup or something sad, they'll grow a beard. So,
yeah, it's like letting go.
yeah.
I remember my ex, he would shave his beard as a way to let go.
Yeah.
And it was funny because he did it after a fight we had. And I was like, what? Why?
That was your first
Get your
sign.
anger at me? Fine. Is that your anger management? Sure, do it.
Yeah, I think no, like I was considering cutting my hair. I was like, you know what? I feel like I want to keep it right now. So, like, just intuitively, I'm like, I don't know. Like,
Yeah,
there's probably a lot of energy here, but you clean it, you cleanse it just like your body. You know what
you
I'm
do.
saying?
You
And it
do.
isn't, it's like an antenna. See, if I stretch it up all the way, it goes past my
You
crown
did
chakra.
exactly. Yeah, and I'm doing a said I keep I don't know why my brain wants to say the word a different way, sadhana, but it's a 40-day kriya. We do kriyas. It's part of Kundalini yoga. And I've always gravitated to that practice of yoga because of the way that it's just different than like the Ashtanga or the other hot, other ways. I don't know. I'm not a yoga person. I'm not a yoga expert, but um these women they always cover their hair. And so in my experience too with scripture, like, yeah, I think when you contain it, your aura is probably much more powerful. So anywho, I just share that hair. That's
Nice.
my hair journey so far. Yeah,
Awesome. Are you complete,
I
Sissy?
am. I am.
All right. So this completes Bruha Tings. As always, we invite you to look into your own practices and rituals and ways that you can refresh or revisit and just bring some life into them and into your life.
All right. So now we head into, as y'all know, Brown Girl Cliff Notes. We've compacted chapter 15 and 16 for you. In 1521, we're almost there, y'all's home stretch. And so 15 was entitled We the People. This chapter is broken down into approximately like about 50%. Miguel Lopez de Legazpi's grandson, Mexico born Juan de Salcedo, and his journey of, quote, conquering a string of Philippine islands. And the other half of the chapter discussed the societal ranking as modeled by Visayan peoples or Visayan peoples, however you want to refer them as reported by William Henry Scott's work, 16th century Philippine culture and history, and looking for the pre-Hispanic Filipino. So William Henry Scott's cited a lot by Ate Judy. Salcido's conquest is referenced by Felice Noel Rodriguez's article, though. Juan de Salcedo joins the native form of warfare. And Felice, argues that Salcido's approach was unique as he was, quote, different than the other Spanish conquistadors, which means that there are people who went to war against other people, but also subjugated and occupied the lands they conquered. Whereas Salcido was actually referred to as a Gugu, bear me, Mangugubat, who are also known to raid lands but don't occupy after. This doesn't mean Salcido did not lead invading, pillaging, and environmental violence upon natives in Mumbarao and the clever three-tiered fortress peoples of the Lumbang Island. But when the fighting got tiring in Mumbarao and Lubang, the Filipinos of Lubang surrendered and they made peace by offering Salcido and his crew 100 taels or tahil, which is referring to the historical name of weight and how much it was worth, 37.50 grams, according to the book, which equates to about $200,000 in US dollars today. So yeah, we'll get into it. But in addition, we learned that the Visayan communities and their ways of dividing society was not to view certain people as, quote, slaves, but there was a kind of hierarchy there. So they had the Datus, the Timawas, and the Oripan, which we'll get into shortly.
Yes. So with chapter 16, it was dubbed Maynila, is about the eventual peace treaty that would occur after an attempt and failure due to conflict of interests, resulting in misunderstandings in May of 1570. By April 1571, Legazpi met the chiefs in Maynila again, And this time, this meeting led to an understanding between Spanish conquistadors and Filipino chiefs and leaders. These leaders included Raja Sulaiman, Raja Laya, La Cansula, and other Filipino chiefs in the presence of a Spanish notary and 5 principal witnesses, including a friar named Herrera, Agoiti, and Salcedo. So Legazpi offered peace and protection in exchange for the Filipinos to submit to the King of Spain and his authority. It is noted with William Henry Scott's Cracks in the Parchment Curtain article that Filipinos usually seal arrangements in blood compacts. And we've seen that in past chapters. We talked about that. But they did not do that with this peace treaty. Either way, Legazpi became the governor and captain general of Maynila, Luzon, and they soon constructed a first municipal government in 1572 before Legazpi died that August. In Spain's continued self-interested advocacy, this base of operations was hoped to launch expansion of the Spanish Empire into China and Japan, and eventually other parts of Asia, Europe, the Americas, and indirectly Africa. So, Philippines seems to be a strategic point in the globe, and we'll get into all that as well. So, let's dive in.
Okay.
All right. So, that was quite a summary. And so let's just dive into our conversation. As always, we point out some vocabulary words and do some quotes. So we'll do that for both of the chapters. And so I wanted to revisit the word that we kind of talked about in the summary, and that was the word mangugubat.
Yeah. I think you said it.
Mangugubat.
Yep.
Okay, so like we said in the summary, the Spanish were known as conquistadors, which implied not only going to war against a people, but also subjugation and occupation of the place conquered. There's a similar term in the 16th century Visayas called mangugubat, but the difference is that the Filipino warriors were raiders and did not occupy the land after the raid. So, I don't know. I thought that was interesting. So they, even if I know there was battles between different chiefs and things, but this is the first I've heard of a mangugubat. And it's interesting that they didn't occupy the land. So they're just like, it's almost like being a pirate. They just took the stuff, they took things, and then they just left. But they weren't like, this is mine now.
Yeah.
Like, let me take your stuff.
Conquistador. I conquer.
So Salcedo, who is Legazpi's grandson, right? So Legazpi, Salcedo, as he raided the villages but did not occupy them, was acting more like a mangugubat and not a conquistador. And so, like we touched on in the summary, he was fighting like the Filipinos. He was participating in basically a Filipino style of warfare. Again, they do eventually subjugate and occupy. But what's interesting to me is Salcedo was born in Mexico. He wasn't born in Spain. So I'm wondering if just the disconnect from being born and raised in Spain and learning one sort of military way to do things, if he was able to kind of blend and be more like, I'm just going to do my own thing, because he was like, I'm in Mexico. I was born in Mexico anyway. So, and I think, I don't like it, but I think it was smart. That was smart of him, you know? So that was my word, mangugubat.
Mangugubat. You said, yeah, that sounds so much better. Practice mangugubat. All these dang syllables.
syllables. Put the wrong emphasis
The wrong syllable.
on the wrong syllable. So that
Manggugubat, y'all. Yeah.
mango gubat. Okay, so that's mine, and I am complete.
Okay, sis. So my word, actually, I was gonna talk to you if you wanted to split these because we're gonna break down the datus, the timawas, and the ripan. If you wanted to, because I don't
Sure.
I get tired of me talking too much. So as Ate Judy's, in her research, citing Henry Scott. Is it Henry Scott? Yeah. The Visayans society was divided into 3 orders, and that's on page 219. Datus, Timawas, and Oripan. And the word Datu is actually translated as chieftain. Was both used for social class and political office. The class was the birthright, aristocracy. I'm not pronouncing things great today. It's fine.
Aristocracy.
Aristocracy. This was
The syllable, the emphasis on the syllable.
I'm telling you. Careful to preserve its pedigree, while the office was the captaincy of a band of warrior supporters, meaning you were born into it, but you also had to work for it.
I like that.
And the supporters of the Datus were the Timawa, and they were not only their Datu's personal bodyguards, but also his own, like they say, his own relatives or even his sons. And then everyone else was a Ripan. So continuing on with page 220, yeah, I don't know if you want to take over.
Yeah. So the Oripon were obligated to serve and support the aristocracy of the Datus and the privileged retainers of the Timawa. So their usual service was agriculture labor, but members of the 3rd class varied in economic status and social standing, from men of consequence who might win Datu status through repute in battle, to chattel slaves born into their condition, into their master's house. At the very bottom of the social scale were those seized in Mangaya raids or purchased in domestic slave trade, which Scott said was literally big business. Right. So I don't know if you wanted to touch on this, but Ate Judy says the Spaniards were kind of confused by the hierarchy of, they didn't understand these 3 offices, the 3 orders of the Visayan society, the Datus, the Timawas, and the Oripan. So, yeah. And interestingly enough, while all the 3 social classes were born into theirs, the position of the Oripan within the class depended upon inherited or acquired debt, commuted criminal sentences, or victimization by the more powerful, meaning enslaved unjustly. So what she goes on to say, though, is like the Oripon work, it was very fluid. These stations were very fluid, and they didn't see slaves as we think of it today.
Yeah, they're not bought or sold. They were members of the master's household. So they were kind of like, serving within the homes, gave their masters or creditors a portion of their crops or labor. Yeah, so some Oripan owned their homes.
Yeah.
Interesting, and probably why it confused the Spaniards, because they're used to conquering, right, and thinking they're superior to everybody. But the Oripan actually had humanistic rights to some degree. Right. Like to own property, right? So even Ate Judy says Scott goes into a dizzying detail about the different groups, their levels of debt and types of work. So there's actually subsets of Oripan. There's Gintobo, Mamahai, or Johai, and they were in military service. They might participate in raids and receive a portion of the plunder according to their status. And if they distinguish themselves in battle with enough bravery, enough regularity, they might move up the ladder to the point of becoming Datus. So it's like the
Yeah.
Oripan can become a datu. That sounds so like, I don't know, like
Yeah. So there was
down
like
for-
there was social mobility. So
I love that.
Dr.
Yeah.
Judy says there's a kind of social mobility not available to slaves in other cultures. And she also says that it surprised me to learn that someone whom the Europeans considered quote unquote slaves might only work a 4-day week or even a 5-day month. So it's not the what we here in America can
Yeah.
think of slaves. And it sounds like in other cultures at that time, even, I don't even know if these would be considered slaves then. If they
Totally.
can move up and become a datu, like
Yeah. And
if you're not stuck, but maybe they just saw it as a different, yeah, I don't know. Maybe they just thought of it differently.
yeah, and then sorry, we skipped a paragraph, y'all. It's about the Oripan had two Tumataban, the most respected. They paid their creditors 5 days of their labor per month. And the Ayui, it's on page 221. We're at the bottom of the social scale, and they lived in their master's house, receiving food and clothing. They were generally field hands that could be purchased for 12 pesos. So it's just kind of confusing. I think like there's like 3 tiers, but then you can move up and down, and you can go from bottom to up, or never about a datu. I don't know. They don't really mention about a datu falling. Fun fact:
Well, yeah.
my ex had a datu name.
What?
Yeah, he was a chief. He didn't even know. We didn't know. My college ex. Yeah. Shout out to Mav if he's listening. Yeah, you're a chief, Mav. See, I was supposed to be a part of a chief's wife. I was supposed to be a chief's I collapsed that timeline, y'all. It's okay.
It's okay. You
But
know what? You are on your highest and best timeline. The best things are coming to you on this particular timeline, sis.
right, you're right. You're
I
right.
mean, obviously I'm here, so this has to be your best one.
Exactly. But yeah, Datu. I thought that was cool. Yeah, his name's like Maverick Datu. Datu. I don't want to say his whole name, but I
So
was like, okay, Datu. Chief. Anyways, that's just my words ish. That's a lot. Again, the social hierarchy broken down in a condensed form per Ate Judy's lens of what it was like to exist in the Philippines or in the Visayan area. Visayan area.
all right, are you complete, Sissy?
I am. Okay, so my quote from chapter 15 is on page 213. Right? Yes. And I picked this quote, 213, arriving about Salcedo when he arrived to the shore. This is when he was going to attempt to conquer Lubang. I just wanted to highlight certain scenes in the storytelling, and basically what happens on page 213 according to Dr. Judy is that his Salcedo and his men went to the nearby next island of Lubang. Arriving at midnight, the other said Salcedo quietly leaped ashore, arranging his men and warriors described as pintados, meaning they were Visayan warriors. And side note, pintados actually means painted people. That's what the Spaniards called. So that's what the Filipinos are, right? Shout out to Wang Odd legacy for being on Philippine Vogue, for normalizing and bringing back the message that
Yes,
we were painted people.
I know.
Yeah. And so what happens is this stopped her in her tracks because she learned this is a portrayal that Salcedo had Filipinos fighting Filipinos. And I was really reminded how very complex and multifaceted this history really is. And that I just wrote next to it's like all skin folk ain't kinfolk. So
Woo.
um,
Bars.
it's an adage. It should be an adage.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, it's true though. I mean, So, anyways, I just wanted to share that amongst Salcido being a sis's word, what was your word again?
Manggugubat.
Manggugubat. He brought other Filipinos to fight other Filipinos, and they would do it at midnight, and they would line up, and you could picture a war scene from there. So, anyways, that was
Yeah.
a little pictorial quote. Any thoughts, sis?
Yeah, I felt the same way Ati Judy did in her reflection about, it's kind of disheartening to know. But at the same time, I kind of understand because, like, if they've never met, like, all of the other people from other nations that they've met have been traitors. No one has tried to conquer them. It's just been infighting between different datus and different chiefs of different islands, right? So they just probably thought, well, that's all this is. I don't think they understood. I'd like to think that they couldn't have understood that this was going to be like a whole thing,
It's part
whole
of taking
conquest.
over your islands. Yeah.
So that's my only thought.
Yeah. Yeah, y'all. I mean, I don't know. Philippines is one of the biggest archipelagos right in the world, and it's no surprise. I mean, 7,000 islands. How
Mm-hmm.
many dialects?
Yeah.
3,000 are only inhabited, but how many dialects we have?
Yeah.
It'd be really hard to unify us. I know that could sound morbid, but I mean, how can you unify? We can't even agree in the states. So how are you gonna unify a bunch of islanders just minding their business,
I
eating
know.
coconuts till someone's like, "Ooh, I want to come here and conquer your island."
I wanna be here, occupy it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, but anywho,
Thank
yeah,
you
all
for
skin folk ain't skin folk. That's
yeah.
I think that's a saying across all nationalities, ethnicities. You know, humans are humans at the end of the day. So,
Thank you for bringing that quote, Sissy. Are you
yes,
complete?
I am.
Okay. So my quote from chapter 15 is on page, wait for it, 222.
Aha.
And it just kind of wraps up what the Oripan are. So the popular understanding of the word slave in modern languages is that of a person owned by another person. But Scott says, the historian William Henry Scott said that there appears to be no such word in 16th century Philippines, though Filipinos might find themselves in this condition. Yet the fact that Oripan only served their master part-time mitigated against any concept of slavery at all. Like I was saying before, it doesn't even seem like they're actually slaves if they're not if there's upward mobility, right? So the Oripan had no equivalent in 16th century European society. By supporting the ruling elite and warrior class, they could be recognized as what might be called, quote, the masses, unquote. In other words, Scott concluded the Oripan were the Filipino people. So there were the majority of us. Um, and and again, I just like that it seems to be the word slave seems to be a 16th century European, like when the Spaniards came, they were like, oh, those people are slaves, but they didn't really understand
Yeah,
fully the
what's
nuance
slave?
of what,
Yeah.
yeah, they didn't think of it. They thought of it in their terms, but for us, the pre-colonial Philippines, we're like, well, yeah, but no. Like, yeah, I might have bought that person or whatever, but they could be my datu like in 2 years if they do good in battle or whatever, right? So, um,
Mhm.
so I don't think, yeah, for us for not like enslaving people to the point of like not acknowledging their humanity and their growth, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I even think like that culture is still kind of apparent now. Like a lot of I don't know, my titas and my titos going to the Philippines and retiring, like they hire help.
Mm-hmm.
And you could see that like a white man or white person might see it as like a slave, but in reality, like they pay them well. They get to
Yeah.
stay in the house.
They get food. They're like family
Yeah.
almost.
And they're treated like family.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know.
My family back home and like people I know who have had like nannies or helpers in the house back home,
Exactly.
they talk about them with like reverence and how they missed them and how they like ate with them. Like they just were
Treat
the
them like
helpers.
humans. They just
Yeah.
help. That's,
Yeah.
it's like village mentality or village. I don't know. I don't know. There's a term it's being coined somewhere, but yeah, it's like a village. Like you need someone to take care of the babies. You need someone to cook the food. You need someone to do the dishes. Like it's
And in
just,
return, we'll take care of you. Like we just it's a mutual taking care of.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and you can there's social mobility upward if you
Mhm.
want to be a datu, go ahead and try.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's some, I think, stories where some, helpers, they go to school while they're,
Yeah.
cooking and
Huh?
taking care of the house for like my auntie or my uncle was there for like,
Hmm.
it's like a thing. Like they go there for like 6 months, they come back to the States, stuff like that. So, anywho, yeah.
Anyway, that was my quote. And that
Interesting.
concludes
You should have gone first, sis. Sorry. That would
chapter
have
15. Oh, that's okay.
been.
It's fine. The scheme of
I
things.
mean,
All right. Okay. So now after we wrapped up chapter 15, we're going into chapter 16. And again, we'll do vocabulary words and then quotes. So my vocabulary word is actually the title of chapter 16. It's Maynila, Maynila. So if you're wondering, Maynila is Manila. So the Spanish came and like put a Spaniard twist on it and called it Manila instead of Maynila. So I just wanted to read this on page 231, that before capturing Maynila, Legazpi wrote to the Viceroy of Mexico that if Philip II was primarily interested in the spices of the Moluccas, then the settlement of Cebu should be made the center of Spanish activity in the Philippines. Because remember, Cebu was like a big spot. But if they were to go on to China, then an island to the north called Luzon, which had an ideal bay and a thriving town called Maynila, would be better. And so I think that's the origin of how Manila became to be the capital of the Philippine Islands. So
yo.
yeah, I
Sorry.
know, right? Because they were like, well, we want to interact with China. So they were like, all right, then Manila. But it's funny because I still hear my mom pronounce Manila like that. Sometimes when she's talking to family back home, she'll say Manila and instead of Manila, but she
Yeah.
says Manila,
And now
May.
we know the pre-colonial term for town for was Maynila, not Manila.
Yeah, it was Manila. It was Manila, not Manila.
Just
So it's
decolonized the literal capital, like or where people all fly in.
yeah,
Dang, that takes me all the cool lyrics. Thriller from Manila.
no,
Now
it's not Thriller from Manila. Well, maybe.
three. How do you, now you gotta find a clever word. Thriller from Manila.
So that is my quote. So if you ever heard your nanay or lola say Maynila,
That's
it's
the pre-colonial term. Okay.
yeah. Okay.
All right. Well, damn. Now I'm gonna start saying Manila.
Me
Okay.
too.
All right. So my my words are on actually two different pages because I wanted to highlight four people. Page 223 and 227. So 223 brings into as we spoke in past chapters, or Danetta and Legaspi. Or Danetta is I think of a religious figure, a friar, and or is sister, do you remember or Danetta? But his task was different versus Legaspi's. Dayana was tasked with finding the route back to Mexico. So, mind you, this is all about the conquest of the Spanish Empire. So they're trying to find a route back to Mexico so
Yeah.
they can keep sending and trading supplies and things like that.
He was a friar. You're right. He was a
Yeah.
religious man. He was a
Yeah.
friar.
So I had a feeling is religious. So that was his task. And then Legaspi obviously was to go towards, it feels like the West and get the island. So that's just kind of I bring them up because Ate Judy cites them. Their statues are existing in that first municipal government that was established in Maynila or whatever, one of the business financial districts or whatever. And then I wanted to point out 227, which was Sulaiman and Lakandula. And so, as we mentioned in the summary, um, when they tried to talk to them initially in 1570, it didn't work because of misunderstandings and conflicts. So, as it says on 227, Raja Sulaiman and Raja Laya received the Spaniards as friends. Lakandula, chief of Tondo, on the northern bank of the river, was hostile. Negotiations stalled and the skirmish broke out due to misunderstanding. There was a conflict on accounts what truly happened, but the result was Manila burned to the ground. So I just think it's interesting highlighting these figures and how they actually went that way or that way in this conquest of colonizing the Philippines, and then how these peace treaty talkings didn't happen because it makes sense. Like, so I just want to highlight like some chiefs were not with this program. They did not want people to come and they did not want to have peace. I mean, that's why it wasn't sealed as a blood compact. But yeah, I wanted to point out that these two Rajas, Sulaiman and Lakandula. I don't know if Lakand is a chief, another chief. Yeah. He was not with it, y'all. So that played a role in the friction. And that's why it took 2 more years to basically successfully conquer, establish Manila. So
2 more years. So imagine if more people had stood up and weren't with it.
yeah.
Been more years. So yeah. So your resistance and your
Yeah, there's a work that Ate Judy cites Kushner's writing. I don't know where Kushner's article comes from. But on 228 it says Kushner says Raja Sulaiman wanted peace and Lakandula wanted revenge. This reaffirmed the difficulty of trying to reconstruct a single narrative when it comes to history.
yeah.
So yeah, I wonder if there had been enough, military to support revenge, what revenge would have looked like, or how many more years it would have taken. But yeah, this was like a chessboard in this Spanish Empire. These were just pieces, and that was interesting.
Yeah. One of the things that, you mentioned the burning of Maynila. Atiduis states that when the Filipinos of Manila saw Legazpi ships, they began to burn their houses. Like they were already burnt from the year before, but they rebuilt them, and then they saw the ships, and they were like, "Nope," and they just burned them and like ran to probably the mountains, honestly, because
Yeah,
gone.
it's that's another
Interesting.
conversation. Interesting. Filipinos, like, they're very resilient, and they just it just speaks to our culture. I think we're very
Yeah.
like adaptable. We literally know how to survive, and we're fine with letting things go, I guess.
Yeah. They were like, okay, I'm gonna go build this somewhere else, burn
I
it to
can
the ground.
I can build a Bahay Kubo in the mountains.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
well, thank you for pointing those figures out, sis. Are you
Yeah,
complete?
no doubt. Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Okay, y'all. So chapter 16 quotes. I just pulled a couple because again, I wanted to keep alive the depiction of the sceneries that are described in
Yeah.
1521. I mean, so 226. Um, this is the talk of when the Spaniards were trying to see what Manila was about, and when they first floated into the bay or harbor, whatever, the Spaniards said that the Manila, they defended their settlement with artillery, and they had casting metal. They had a foundry or workshop for casting metal, complete with casts. Kushner said the weapons could have been brought from Borneo or cast in Manila under Bornean supervision. And there's speculation that Portuguese deserters have taught the Filipinos in Manila the use of construction artillery. By the way, on top of that paragraph, it says there that Manila was situated along the southern bank of a large river, and it thrived on agriculture and trade. The land all around the bay was fertile, and well cultivated. That was one of the reasons why they picked that place. And then 228, as Sis and I kind of mentioned, they burned down the town when they saw the ships. And then they crossed the river to go to Tondo. Remember that chief that was against it?
Yeah. They were like, let's go to him.
And that's why he was like seeking revenge, maybe. He's like, dang, every time these invaders come, like everyone flees to our side of town or the country. So that's kind of a depiction again what happens. They burn their fertile ass looking lush areas and run. And then page 230, which is towards the end. So when they conquistadors settled in, they took over the land, right? They said that, the islands were well populated on coasts and riverbanks. The land was fertile and abundant, and if food was lacking, it was because the land was not cultivated. Luxury items such as gold and pearls could be found in the archipelago. And they were obviously in strategic areas close to Japan, China, Moluccas, Borneo. Ports are good. There's plenty of timber and material for making sails. And yeah, it was such a bay. I call it Baynila. For these ports to come, and the Spaniards really like the Chinese silk and porcelain. And again, this is all about empire, right? Trade.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I just want to in light of the times where they're running and fighting and burning down houses, there was also the reason why these people, Spaniards and alike, came is because it was just so lush looking, and they stayed because of the supplies, which speaks to the islands and what Philippines has. So
Yeah, I like that. I like how you highlighted those things to give, like you said, kind of give a snapshot of in our mind of what was happening.
yeah, and I wanted to share some gold because my grandmother's
Oh yeah.
gold was sitting here with my when I was burning earlier, and these are kind of like Visayan looking. Obviously, gold was abundant in the Philippines, but anyways, they wore jewelry like this.
Is that a necklace, sis?
Yeah, it broke. I need to get it fixed, but it does go like this.
Oh, cute.
Yeah.
Aw. What's your Lola's name?
Oh, this is from my mama,
Oh,
Magdalena. Yeah.
Magdalena.
She was a jewelry woman. So
Wasn't all our Lolas though.
I know. Because it's gold. It's in our DNA. That's still something I would love to go back to the Philippines and like see how they mined gold and like how they like only took what they needed.
Yeah, and so just going back real briefly to Manila and how they were how it was described as the land was fertile and abundant, and there was a river. And just thinking about, I don't know if any of you remember have been back to the Philippines or been to the Philippines or back to the Philippines and have flew into Manila. it doesn't, it's like, it's very crowded there. And from what some other family have said, like the pollution is really bad in
Oh
the
my God, the air is disgusting. Yeah.
yeah, and it's like, oh my gosh, like it used to be fertile and abundant. It could like
Um,
people could burn shit to the ground and it would come back a year later.
has too many malls and too many high rises, in my
Yeah.
opinion. I'm just one opinion in many, but yeah, it's the air is not pleasant. Like,
Yeah, they wear masks over there for reasons, regular reasons, not to breathe all that in.
yeah,
Well, thank you for that snapshot, Sissy. Are
I
you complete?
am.
Okay. So, my quote is from page 231 and it's about globalization. So, like we said, the Spaniards were very strategic about where to put their base. They were looking at all the different places. Should we be in Cebu? Should we be in Manila? Which is better for what things, right? So, Ate Judy says in this paragraph, I was not aware of the central role the Philippines played in globalization. Mind you, she grew up in the Philippines, even, and she went to school in the Philippines as a kid. I was not aware of the central role the Philippines played in globalization. When I asked my other Filipino friends, they also had really no clue. I wondered why the writers of our history textbooks chose not to highlight this. Could it be because they didn't want Filipinos to realize how vital the islands were to creating this global network? It would make sense that the Spanish and American colonizers would not want the Filipinos to realize their strategic importance.
Hmm.
So, again, like I said, Ati Judy went to school in the Philippines. So when she says, why did the writers of her history textbooks not highlight this? Just keep in mind, she's speaking the writers of the Philippine history books in the Philippines, right? And um, so yeah, Spanish and American colonizers would not want the Filipinos to realize their strategic importance. That's the way of disempowering them, right? So if they understood the major part they played in the global world, right?
Hmm.
Um, that's empowerment.
Mhm.
Like y'all, if you know that you're important, you're gonna walk differently in the world. You're gonna make different choices if you know you were like a hinge point, right? So I don't know. I thought that was interesting, and I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that either. I mean, that's why we were fought over, right? By the
Yeah.
and the
Well, what
Portuguese.
comes? Go ahead, sis. Sorry.
No, that's I was just gonna say that's why we're fought over by the Spanish and the Portuguese. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like, the word that comes to mind is strike. If Filipinos want to strike, that would be a wrap for
Yeah.
if they do, they knew of that back then. Like, we're not gonna give you our supplies and let you settle here unless you, but maybe we didn't have the technology, the education.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then we were colonized, and then, the Americans came over and changed some of our textbooks again to reflect how
Ugh.
perhaps we as a people, as a nation, as a culture, owe things to America, or like basically disempowered us. Disem- uh, Disempowered us. So,
I know, and I think that's part of like the sacred rage that
yeah.
is coming up for me, and especially because we're doing this decolonizing podcast by choice. But just the information you can't unsee or unread things now, and then you kind of, for me, like I look up and I'm like, why are we mad like that? Our shit was like stolen, and I'm sure there's others out there.
Is I think for the Philippines, it's just very, very like that question about why aren't we mad? It's just we were gaslit for so long. We were disempowered for so long. We weren't really told who we were and who we are,
Yeah,
right? And so That's probably why.
And we're just so nice and giving. You can come and pillage our freaking island, try to fight with us for how many days? My ancestors in Lubang and I don't know, whatever, right?
Yeah,
But and then we'll give you gold so that you'd be peaceful to us.
I know. And even like our mango gubat, I mean, even the way they like they didn't they just raided and they're like, okay, bye. Like I'm sure it was like more violent than that, but what I'm saying is I don't know, even that it just feels kind in a like if you look at it from a bird's eye view, then
Yeah.
conquering and
It's the less violent way
yes, still
of
violent.
conquering a land that isn't yours. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and also I'm wondering if that's why just this is just coming to me now. Like we read a lot about the Filipinos when the Spanish came, they just left. And I'm wondering if it's just because that's what they're used to with the Mangugubat. They're like, "Oh, raiders are coming. Let's just leave our stuff. They can raid it. We're going to leave." You know,
Yeah.
and then we'll come back. So, but anyway, I don't know. I wasn't there. I'm just speculating. So,
It's
anyways,
like flight. All the ways of survival, right? Do we
mhm.
fight? Do we flight?
Bond freeze.
Bonding is, I think that's a whole nother Pandora's box. We don't like, we had time now, I think. But yeah, thanks all for tuning in. Sorry, you feel complete, sis.
I do. I feel complete.
Yeah.
All right, as we gratefully end this conversation, separate and cleanse our energies, and close out this container, we must recognize and honor all our ancestors, guides, and forces that brought us here. Thank you so much with gratitude. We also recognize you, dear Kaputid, for tuning into this conversation today. And as always, your ates leave you with a blessing. As you continue on this lifelong journey of remembrance, may you know that you play a more strategic part in our collective liberation than you may realize. May you know that we and all those that will come after you are grateful for the sacred work you are doing as you learn, integrate, and heal. May you know your ancestors are of importance, and so are you. May the remembrance of Kapwa anchor you back into your heart. And until we see you again, may you know that all is well and will be well, and that no matter what happens, you are